now to Alex Greenwich, who's a New South Wales Independent MP. Alex Greenwich, appreciate your time this morning in the midst of this debate. Now, with a little bit of hindsight, do you think this acrimony could have been avoided if there was a more laboured process, a broader conversation?
Well, this is a conversation that people across New South Wales have been having for decades, and people have been campaigning for this for decades. The New South Wales lower house sent a very clear message. 2/3 of MPs supported the legislation. They had clearly enough time to form a view on this bill, and there's been detailed consultation. It's quite clear that the opponents of reform are now just seeking to delay it, which is deeply unfortunate. The New South Wales Upper House, though, is a place that has its own processes. So, we will just need to make sure that we use this time to make the voices of people across New South Wales heard, that it is now time to decriminalise abortion in New South Wales.
Yes, you're right, Alex. There has been a campaign for some time, but it wasn't a big feature of the New South Wales elections. So I think some constituents feel like this has been thrust upon them. Do you accept that?
No, I don't. This was publicly flagged in March that I was going to introduce this bill. There had been numerous media reports, and there has obviously been a number of weeks now to discuss this specific bill. I have done more consultation with members on this bill than has ever been done with me on any other piece of legislation. This is something where we had 65 members of the lower house speak, some members speaking 10 to 12 times on the one bill. There has been a detailed process. This has the support of the AMA, the Bar Association, and as I said, 2/3 of our lower house have already supported this bill. They have said they've had enough time to go through this. Clearly, there are some people who still oppose the bill, and they're now just seeking to delay it.
Well, we've seen accusations of some kind of secret deal with Gladys Berejiklian and the coalition government in New South Wales with you. Was there any deal before the election?
Absolutely not. You can't do
Was
deals
there any
on conscience vote. Not at all. No discussion at all. There cannot be deals on conscience vote issues. You've got to deal with members individually on these bills, and there are 93 members in the lower house. We were able to convince 59 of them to support the bill.
No, but the Premier needs to enable
those.
the bill to come on for debate, correct?
Well, this bill followed the precedents that have been set by other conscience vote issues. Whether it was bills like Zoe's Law or same-sex adoption, there were 15 co-sponsors of this bill, a great deal of public interest, and it was important that we had time to debate this and enough time for every member to speak, and that is simply what the Parliament allowed, for every member to speak and debate amendments in a thorough and full way.
You say that the opponents of this bill are just trying to delay it, but the other side of that argument is, what's the rush when no one has been charged under this law in, I think, more than 30 years? So why not take the time to get it right?
Well, as I said, we've got the bill right, and 2/3 of the lower house have agreed to that already, and they have asked the upper house to move on with it. This is something that women have been campaigning for decades in New South Wales. This is a law that dates back to 119 years. It is now the time to move forward. We will have a number of speeches today on the bill. We will probably have a vote on the second read. That's the next step before we go into the amendment process, and I'm hopeful that the bill will finally pass, and women in New South Wales will be treated with the same dignity and respect as women in other states and territories across Australia.
How can you say that you've got the bill right when the legislation, as it stands, would allow abortions on gender selection up to 22 weeks?
Well, the lower house has dealt with this issue, and we made it very clear that there was opposition to gender selection to termination solely based on gender selection. We also legislated for a 12-month review into the issue. But the fact is that this is not a concern in New South Wales today, and it will not be a concern in New South Wales following the passage of this legislation. That is the view of the AMA, and that is the view of the Chief Obstetrician of New South Wales. What we're dealing with here is not an amendment, which is genuine, but a talking point to try to delay and frustrate this process.
Okay, so you deny that, as a lawmaker, not as part of the AMA, that this legislation would allow gender selection up to 22 weeks?
As I said, this is not an issue now, and it will not be an issue when this bill passes. What we do have now is
not an issue and a loophole are two separate things, though.
Oh, sure. Well, there is nothing in the bill that would change the current situation in law. This has not been an issue that has been raised at all. What we have done is we've said, let's investigate this further. Let's have New South Wales Health look into this and report back to Parliament on how to deal with it. We haven't had any good faith amendments on this issue come forward yet, and there has been no evidence that this is an issue in New South Wales. So, you know, what we're dealing with here, as I said, is a talking point from opponents who are trying to put their anti-abortion talking points into law, and that's not good practice. It's not something the AMA supports, it's not something the Chief Obstetrician supports, and it's not something that a majority of the lower house supports. We have made it very clear. We oppose termination solely based on gender selection, and we have now instigated a 12-month review in law into this issue. So let's wait to see those findings and see the appropriate way to deal with this. We've got to make sure that we don't do anything in this bill that creates new barriers for women being able to access safe and legal abortions, and that has been the concern raised by the proposals that have been put forward.
But just quickly, by the very need for a review, aren't you conceding that by having a review, there's a chance that it could happen?
What we are conceding is, and what we are acknowledging, is that some members raised this concern at the very last minute, and we have said there is an appropriate way to deal with this, and that appropriate way to deal with this is to do a full and thorough investigation by New South Wales Health.